So we have the Three of Cups this go round. And this version, it's great. It's like naked women with rainbow hula hoops around their hips, which is awesome, on a waterfall.
Can you hold it a little bit
And
higher?
yeah.
Perfect.
And then I was just going to read actually from this book because I really, really love this book. Rachel Pollack. It's short. So she says, so this is from the Rider-Waite. She's more, I mean, she looks at a couple different decks, but primarily the Rider-Waite. And she says, the threes show an appreciation of the meaning and value of the suit. Because of the grail at the base of the suit, the Three of Cups indicates joy, celebration, and above all, sharing the wonder of life. As if we had passed the crisis of action, the final three cards, all according to their numbers, flow with happiness. Here we see the women celebrating at a harvest. Either a crisis is finished or work has produced good results. We see the three women so intertwined we can hardly tell whose arm is in who. In bad times as well as good, the card shows a sharing of experience. And then she gives the reversed interpretation. So if it comes up reversed, again, several meanings present themselves. First of all, it can show the loss of some happiness. Very often it indicates that something hoped for has not come about. It can also signify the failure of friendship, and again, the disillusionment of finding that friends have not supported us when we needed them, or else the breakup of a good group of friends.
And this is the card that she's referencing, the Rider-Waite.
Yeah. So pretty. Beautiful. We got themes of sisterhood and friendship, which is cool. We know a thing or two about that. I bet we could talk about that.
Yeah, I think you know what I always say on these minor arcana cards, that it's useful to look at the corresponding major arcana card, which is the Empress, the three. And I think she's just like a classic lady having a great time card. Firstly, that's how I read her. But because there's three women in the picture, I can't help but think about maiden, mother, crone, and the three aspects of goddess. So it could be a sisterhood with other women, or it could be a sisterhood within oneself with those aspects of self, perhaps.
Are they each different colors, their robes? Is that a white, red, and like pink?
Well, there's yeah, basically white, red, and pink.
That's great.
But like the description said, it's hard to tell whose arm's whose, and it's hard to tell whose feet are whose, because there only seems to be 3 feet. I guess they're all standing on one leg. And then around the bottom, there's a bunch of, it's got autumnal fruit and veg. I think there's a pumpkin there. So that's kind of that feeling of harvest and abundance, which is the name on the bottom of the cloth. It says abundance there, which is probably why I thought of it. And that's just got these lovely overflowing cups.
And what is that? Is that Mercury in?
It's like the symbol for a lady, but with a crescent moon on top. What is that, Sarah? Can you see that? Oh, and they're being filled, these chalices are being filled by what look like sort of lotus-y type flowers on stems.
Yeah, that is Mercury up top. And at the bottom,
It's Pisces.
Cancer.
Was it Cancer?
It's the sign of Cancer, yeah. Yeah, I guess
Mercury Cancer.
in
That's right.
Cancer, yeah.
The 3 colors too, like I always, red, I think of like blood, the body, like, and then white, that kind of more spiritual, transcendental purity. And then the 2 coming together, pink being red and white coming together, body and spirit combining.
Pink roses of love. I just love how well, at least 3 of us is a little bit disheveled. Me being one of them.
Wait a minute.
This is a thin line.
Okay, to be fair, it was the full moon last night, and I was up at 3 with her. Yes, I was celebrating like these 3 little ladies on the front.
It's the abundance card and the friendship abundance card, and I think it's beautiful. It's part of abundance and friendship to just be able to show up as you are, because I remember we had like one of the cards that you already did. I think in your deck, Holly, it was also abundance called, because I remember we talked about abundance actually being like more something like this, like time spent, like abundance of love, abundance of, because I remember quoting Jesus saying, I have come to give you life and life abundantly, and how abundance is often like seen as a lot of money or a lot of possessions, but that is very much not what it is. And I think this is exactly abundance. Having friends to show up to just as you are, being not necessarily in the best of places, but that's okay, because the cup's flowing and there is like.
I think that's actually been historically one of my sort of problems with sisterhood, is that I haven't been able to trust people to do that, to just turn up simply as myself. That I've always been presenting a certain, like, just thinking that I have to be, I mean, perfect sounds crazy, obviously, because no one can be perfect, but just expecting, I don't know, expecting myself to be a certain person specifically around other women. And obviously that just cuts people out because they can't actually connect to you. They only connect to the person you're pretending to be. I rewatched When Harry Met Sally the other day, which was a bit naughty because it is technically a Christmas movie in my head canon. But I sneaked it in early. And
You rule breaker.
Yeah, we can't accept you now, Rebecca. Sorry.
I love that movie. But like, one of the central premises is men and women can't be friends because sex always gets in the way. That's what he says right at the beginning, and then that story plays out throughout the movie. And it's actually like a really clever examination of male-female, interactions and stuff. And I just wonder what you guys thought about that. Can men and women be friends? And is there something, I think, I don't know, is there something very different about the friendship, the sisterhood, versus a friendship with a man or with a group of men?
I mean, like, actually some of my closest friends are men, but they're older, like almost grandfatherly, right? Like elders. So it's age is some sort of factor in that equation somehow too. But yeah, because obviously, like in the movie, it's right, more, if there's potential, more potential, more arousal potential there, then it can't happen. But yeah, that's an interesting question.
I think that's important, that if there's potential, then it's maybe too complicated. Like I'm slowly starting to, and I don't know if I will call it friendships. I would rather call it fellowship. To build fellowship with men. That I'm capable of doing. And then it has to be, from my perspective at least, I find it more comfortable building fellowship with men that are in steady relationships, that there's absolutely no potential of either one of us falling in love with the other one. That basically. That if the potential is not there for more than friendship, then fellowship is very possible.
What do you think the difference is between friendship and fellowship?
Let's go back to the Fellowship of the Ring.
Yes.
Like those people, those people weren't just people who had a bond for life or hang out sometimes on the dark moon or things like that. They had a mission. They had a shared mission. They had to get the ring to Mordor. And I think there's some sort of mission involved with fellowship, some sort of shared goal, what we want to reach, or even if it's just like these philosophical fellowship, around the Viveki Foundation, the fellowships around dialectic into dialogos. It's about building a life that's directed towards the good and a virtuous life. So that's not a very specific goal. I don't know, at least, that there's any ring that needs to be gotten to Mordor, but maybe I've just haven't been informed. Maybe I'm one of the hobbits that know nothing. I'm just along for the ride. But I think Fellowship, there's some sort of mission behind it, and friendship is a deep bond based more on the two souls involved than on any external calling or.
That's so interesting because I have had this habit of starting projects with friends. Like I love to have a project, and I mean that is just part of my personality. I do love projects, and I do love to have a project. But I also think it's another mechanism that I've created to create a structure, a scaffold for a relationship, so it can't get any bigger. Because, like, for example, me and a very, very close friend of mine used to do a podcast together, and that was great because we had this, we got together every month to record the podcast, and then we had to research the podcast. Like we had we started this project not long after we became close friends. And I remember when it got to a point that my life just got too busy basically, and I couldn't continue the podcast, and having that conversation with her was very, very hard for me. And the fear, of course, was, well, does this mean we stop being friends?
Yeah.
And she was like, that's crazy, you're crazy. I was like, well, you know that. That's why we're friends in the first place. But yeah, that's my fear, because and it's this funny thing, because it's like the project, the moving a friendship into the domain of fellowship feels like it will keep you safe, but actually it kind of hobbles your growth. I mean, potentially not. Potentially you could have both running alongside. That would be ideal. But I just think it was really interesting to hear you break down that distinction. That resonates.
Yeah, that happened to me recently with another project that I was working on with friends, and we tried several projects actually before that. And I actually told Holly this. One of the girls was the one that kind of decided to dissolve because she was like, I can't do it anymore. And that was not the upsetting part. That part I was like, oh, thank God. Like, because I had told them, I was like, you guys have been pulling me through this whole thing. But when I had that moment of realization that it was over, I told her, I was like, it's okay, that this is done, but does this mean we're not friends anymore? Just like you did. And the second I said that, I'm sobbing. I didn't even realize that would happen, but I'm just like terrified that means that we're not friends anymore. And that was the same response. Of course we're friends still, but I've had so many situations that I think maybe like solidify the friendship with a project, because also for me growing up, I was my friends were gifted. I was put in a gifted program, so I was given friends. These are your friends. They were even called PAL, Program for Advanced Learners. PAL. These are your pals. These are people you hang out with. And so that was given to me. And then when we uprooted, I didn't have that. There was actually very nice people in the country that I moved to, but it was like, yeah. So I don't know. I think we have a similar like thing about friends, girlfriends, and what's the conditions of us being friends? Maybe I should put some in here. Maybe I should come up with some reason why you have to stay with me. I wonder about Isak. I'm wondering what do you think about the relationship with guys or friendship with guys?
Yeah, I don't know. I think growing up, it also felt to me like it was much easier for me to just have a guy friends. I'm not sure why. It also could be just because I grew up in a household with only women around. So maybe it was interesting to just have guy friends to access a different view of life and things. And it's taken me time, I think. It's taken me time not only to be comfortable with friendships with women, but also be comfortable with like big friendships in general. I think if I'm not one of those people who's like, oh, this is my best friend from like, like I know people who are like, yeah, this is my best friend and since middle school or something. Like, I don't know that I even have a best friend. I have a lot of really good friends and a lot of people I deeply love and care for. But yeah, but this idea of friendship as this like, or a friend as this like such a pivotal figure in one's life is, I guess, less present for me. Mm. And yeah, and friendships with men. I don't know. I don't think that I've ever had a close friendship like with a guy that felt like one-on-one. It was always like it's a group and we're all friends. And there's definitely several men in that group and we're all close, but there's always this thing of like it's the group, it's not just us. And the ones that started like that usually ended in relationships. So or ended in me being like, no, I don't want a relationship, thank you. Yeah, I'm not sure about that. And I also like Holly, I also do think that for me to see a man as a friend, they tend to be like older, more mentor kind of figures. Where it really feels just like, I guess, I'm not sure how to say it, but in those scenarios, I guess it feels like I have something to learn from them and they have something to learn from me, and like there's this a lot of transmission of knowledge and not that that couldn't happen with some younger guy, but it feels like that might be behind more layers of other intentions, and it's harder to get there. And I'm sure, like, if you can get there, it's probably completely possible to have a real friendship. But I always remember this line. I think I'll say it a few times. Like this, I think she was like this cognitive scientist, and she always, I think I've said it before. Like she says, "Oh, like life is whatever happens before puberty and after menopause is like, you know, that chunk in between where you have hormones and sex takes over your life, then yeah, you're not gonna be living your best full life." So I do think there is some of that, and it is, I guess, what it is.
I think it's interesting because it's like proposing that if there's some erotic tension between people, they can't be friends. And I'm not sure that's true, mainly because I feel erotic tension between literally me and everyone.
Exactly.
Which would mean they can't have any friends, which doesn't seem right.
Oh, you sit in the corner. I agree. Like there is kind of a little bit of that erotic tension with anybody I do a chart reading with, I will say, because that's like me seeing your energy is either attractive, it might be like confusing or whatever, but however I'm feeling about that chart, I have no control over. And there are times where I'm like, oh, that's juicy. You know, as you see stuff, you're like, wow, there's no way that's not what I think it is. So,
do you ever have a situation where you look at someone's chart and you fancy them before you even meet them, like before you see their face?
It's happened many times.
Like, whoa, look at Virgo there.
This is what I'm saying. Like, I know this. I know what you're talking about. Where I'm definitely attracted to people. So I don't know how to solve that with Rebecca. It's nice when you're locked into a relationship. I mean, if there's nothing else that's kind of serving, it's like I remember one time my friend told me she was at a bar and she was talking to a guy, and at some point she mentioned her husband, and he was like, "Oh, you're in a relationship? Oh, thank God. I'm so much more comfortable now." He was like, "I'm in a relationship too," and like immediately like the comfort of them not being flirting with each other. So that's kind of the thing. It's like communication, like just being very clear, I guess, is how men and women could be friends. But I've had situations where I've been very fucking clear. Very clear with swear words and everything about not wanting to be with somebody, and then it still doesn't get through. So there are certain situations where you just can't because of the person, but I think that it's totally possible.
Yeah, I have been known to invoke Paul in the middle of a conversation for no particular reason, but I just want the person to know that I have asked.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why we wear rings, but not everyone notices rings.
Mm.
Mhm.
What about sorry, thinking about rings, I don't know why I've gone into like questioning mode today, but I am. What about like friendship bracelets or those little hearts that they go in half and then you give one to your best girlfriend and you keep one for yourself? Has anyone dabbled with any of that business?
Can I just? You're going way too fast for me today, Rebecca. Can I
No,
just go
I know,
back
slow
to
down.
Yeah.
Me too.
the eros part? So, because I think any human interaction has a bit of eros in it,
Mm,
and that is good. But I think that if there's what I mean with there's no potential for more, it's because both feel the eros, acknowledge the eros, not necessarily verbally, but in themselves, but know that this is not going to go in that direction. This
mm,
is just, and because I thought of this book, and it writes beautifully on eros, and how a lot of the religions just focus on the negative side. Um, so it says, if we suppress eros so as to suppress the worst in human nature, then he talks about the bad things. We also suppress the best. And then for best, he means together they teach that eros is the source of both the best art, law, philosophy, etc., and the worst tyranny, because eros is that one to possess, one to control as well, of human possibilities. So I think eros is behind the, I mean, the beauty of existence.
mm,
So I don't want to deny that it can be there in friendship, as part of friendship. It's just difficult if one person thinks or both people think. But if both people think, then it could turn into a relationship. But
Mm.
it's just like, I think it's more fun. Like that guy said, "Oh, thank God I know now you're married. I'm married too. So let's just do the be happy together and make art or
Yeah,
philosophy."
it's closing, not closing potential, but like, yeah, like kind
Mm.
of how things become more tangible if you put some frame around it. That when we just started talking about abundance, I went in looking if I had any abundance quotes, and I don't have a lot. I don't think it's a word I use as much as other people do,
Mhm.
but I have this one quote, and it says, "Abundance and chaos are different aspects of one and the same world." And I think what this guy is saying here is, this is more of a critique about the division between art and science and how rationalizing things doesn't make sense. But what he's saying is like, if you, yeah, like I guess people go into rationalism because they're scared of the chaos. But what he's saying is like, if you're scared of the chaos, you're also
Mm.
not seeing the abundance.
Mm.
It's like being open. You need, like, they kind of go hand in hand. Like being able to see everything is literally seeing everything. It's seeing the chaos, but it's also seeing the abundance. And I guess it reminded me of what you just said, Lizelle. So it's like how eros can be all the good, but it can also be the bad. It's like these things always go hand in hand.
Yeah, I mean, I want to bring in like a real life thing I've been struggling with, because especially around celebration and like recently being with family, celebration, Thanksgiving, and trying to create like friendship and fellowship with people, but noting how sometimes it's so hard to actually find that kinship actually in that eros, and like noticing how some of the people I'm trying to connect with are so fucking sarcastic, and how it's really hard to actually then get to anything meaningful or any sort of deeper, intimate kind of connection when everything gets diverted into like, we can't go there, so we're just gonna like make a snide comment here or there. And so then just like noticing I was really struggling with that, like over this celebratory weekend. And actually with women in particular, like I was okay with the guys. Like it was sort of interesting. I was like, okay with the guys there, like, because we could just talk facts, like we could just talk like events and facts. But then with some of the women, it was hard because I sensed a lot of walls, and it was hard for me to tap into that celebratory experience. But this is my job. This is my fucking job as a therapist, is like trying to find that pathway into something more real. And I noticed I was just struggling with that because of all the sarcasm and noticing it was harder with the women.
That's exactly what sarcasm is for. It's to keep you at a distance.
Yeah.
Like I mean, like for me, I can be a very sarcastic person, and it is to protect myself, to not let people get close.
Yeah.
So I guess it's working for them.
But it's painful. It's really painful.
Yeah.
There's a longing to celebrate together and to like bring that abundance into the foreground. And so just like, it's an interesting puzzle of how do you rescue the light out of that situation so that that celebration can be felt. Or sometimes it's just walking away too, it's like, oh, it's not here, so let me go for a walk or whatever.
Yeah, I have like a very similar, I mean, people are dying here, so there's like no cheer. It's like not cheerful at all. And for Thanksgiving this year, we actually went to my cousin's house. We didn't even stay here. And when you were just talking, what it reminded me of is how like there was definitely an invitation for me to be the light. There's like you have to just kind of return that non-love with love and all those kind of platitudes, and you feel like you want to do it, and especially like for Thanksgiving, but I didn't. I fell short of being able to produce that, and it's just because you go so long without this merriment, this ability to dance on the front of a card like these ladies are doing. Like, so yeah, there's just darker times where this card, even when I was looking at it last night, I was like, really? Like, this is what we're gonna talk about right now. Not that, that we shouldn't, but it just didn't feel like I was in a celebratory mood. I was like, I mean, the full moon was beautiful last night, and with Jupiter co-present, it's nice. But I'm still kind of wondering, with the world in the state that it's in, with my grandparents in the state that they're in, with me living in the conditions that I'm in, which, it's not as bad as I often make it out to be, but it is, the situations don't seem to call for this card. So, but it's nice to reflect on it too, and to see like these different sides of it, because it's interesting. We didn't just go straight into, so guys, you ready to celebrate? Let's do a toast. It's like we went to a different side of it that I wasn't expecting. Like, so why is it that I like this, keeping this discreet? I think that's kind of my relationship with this card, is that I've felt recently that this side of me, this joyful side of celebrating, is something that I keep hidden because, well, the way that it's interacted with in my everyday life is just gotten to the point now where it's kind of beat the fucking light out of me.
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah. I can resonate with that. I've had the same experience where I was just like, I don't have it in me right now. Like sometimes I do, where I can just like, there's this power to really bring that forward and bring that alive, and it's contagious, and that spirit of seeing the world from a magical lens. But I did not have it over Thanksgiving. I was like,
well, something else that just came to me was the fact that there's 3 women on the card. So whether or not that's the same woman or not, it's like you kind of need that motor. You kind of need to go back and have that time of running around a circle, and you actually have to like pull that chain, because otherwise, yeah, you get flattened, you get deflated.
yeah.
I'm just wondering, and if we are actually meant to be friends with so many people. Like
Yeah.
I see friendship as something very special and very exclusive.
Yeah.
And I think that's why even fellowship is easier for me to go into fellowship with people, because there are many people that share a mission, for instance. there's a saying, I can't remember who said it, keep your friendliness cheap but your friendship expensive, or something like that.
Interesting.
Mm.
And I don't know, I've never had experiences of feeling, oh, I wish I feeling that block, because if I feel a block, I just walk away, and that's not it. Then I'm not gonna. With friendship, I have more struggle doing that in romantic relationships.
But what about like family, right? Like where it's like you're going to be with these people, you know?
Well, family is also very much not friends.
Yeah.
That's a whole different category
Yeah.
and a whole different way of interaction. You could have friends within your family, but I think that's the exception rather than the rule.
But there's a thing in Buddhism, you know, where it's like part of the mission is to become friendly with like everything, you know, become friendly with the
Friendly.
monster. Yeah.
Friendly, yeah.
Yeah. Friendly.
Be
Friendliness.
cheap with that. Be cheap with that friendliness.
No, I definitely think that's true. I remember when Facebook first became a thing, and I got on there and had all these friends on there. And it was very quick that I became overwhelmed by it, because I felt like I had to like tend to all these friendships, and I had to like make sure everyone knew that I cared about them, and that and I was doing this, and it became like a job. And then I was just like, this is making me crazy. And so I was only on Facebook for a very brief amount of time, because it just like it felt, and like you only have so much time and so much resources to offer people. So it's not even like, yeah, you just can't. It's not like you shouldn't be friends with lots of people, but you actually can't be friends with that many people, because you can't devote the amount of attention that a friendship needs to be a friendship.
Otherwise, friendship becomes cheap.
Yeah.
If you have to spread your resources so thin, then friendship becomes cheap.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's either being selective or being cheap.
Yeah. And I think even if we don't want to think of finite resources, because that invokes scarcity and this is abundance, but even then, I think just being able to say, out of all the infinite possibilities, this is my possibility, and that's it. In making that choice, I think that's probably one of the most important choices we get to make. I'm thinking maybe that's one of the benefits or wonders of being in a foreign land, which is once people see you and they see that clearly you are not from here, like all these social codes and social layers and things of how you're supposed to interact go away, because they're not expecting you to have a common background or a common whatever way of speaking or a common idea of what the society you're part of is supposed to be or anything like that. And then it all boils down to the most basic things, and people get so happy about really just like you saying thank you, or you just being like we went back to this place on Friday where this guy that makes tofu like handmade, and we used to go there years ago and we just wanted to have it again, and I told the guy like, oh yeah, we came here all the way just to try your tofu. And the guy was almost like crying out of happiness because these two
Wow.
random foreigners remembered his tofu. And it's things like that. It's just like, I think, I guess, yes, okay, to some extent it might feel more superficial because you're not seeing people with all the complexity of their cultural, social backgrounds. But at the same time, you get to see like this human core
Mhm.
that is so simple and so accessible, I think, across different places and different people. And in that sense, I think that's, yeah, what has allowed me to keep some of my sanity and not feel alone here, because it's at the end of the day, you're still able to see and connect with people even if you don't speak their language or you don't know their background. Or last week we had this, like, it's very common to have these office kind of drinking parties kind of thing.
Mm.
And I remember just sitting and seeing my boss kind of 2 seats over, and I saw that he, like, the hair in his back here grows like in a weird triangle patch, and I was like, oh, that's really interesting. And I don't like that specific moment made me feel like, like, yeah, he's a human with hair that grows in a triangle patch. He's not my monster boss or anything like that. So yeah, maybe I just have this ability to see people in people. I don't know, but I do think it has helped me to meet good people, meet good friends, and stay sane.
Mhm.
Two things now. First, you just refuted Holly's claim in one of our previous conversations that triangles don't appear naturally in nature. Because in
There you go. I don't know. Is it going to cut that way, or is it natural? I don't know if it's yet. We can't. There's more investigation.
I'll go by the office tomorrow and be like, excuse me.
Yeah.
How natural is your triangle?
But talking of triangles, I think we now have 3 levels maybe of deep ways in which we can deeply interact with other human beings. The fellowship, the friendship, the fellowship, and then the shared humanity,
Mm.
which is different from either one of the others, but equally beautiful and can be equally deep.
Mhm.
I've had a weird experience recently because I've been going to this I told you guys about it before, Koya. It's like a dance thing, but it's like freestyle dance, and it's kind of spiritual, and it's all women. And I go usually once a week, and I've been going now for maybe a little bit less than a year. And we don't, like, you go, like, especially at the beginning, you go into the class and you do the thing, and the lady leads you through. She's amazing. Leads you through all the dances and plays this great music and stuff. And then at the end you leave. So you don't really have that much time for chit chat. Maybe like a hello to the people who are regulars and a goodbye at the end. But now when we greet each other, we hug.
Mm.
And it's not because we've developed this complex understanding of each other's lives because we've sat and had coffee together 1,000 times. We're just in the same room dancing like the ladies on the card. And something has made us feel like we are friendly, even though we haven't done, you know, the conversation, the chit chat, which is what generally, at least for me, has been part of making friends. It's been talking to them, not just waving my arms and legs around, you know, on a yoga mat next to them. So I think that maybe there's something erotic in that. It's like, yeah, I don't know.
And like Holly pointed out last time, our day of silence was like, I think that's when we connected and bonded the most.
Mm.
Well, what I was going to say about the dancing together, and then also maybe about the silence together as well, is that there's vulnerability in it. There's space in it. It's very feminine, those activities, I think. Silence or just being open and receptive to anything, whatever is going to react with what I'm doing. I'm not attempting to assert my will over it. I'm inviting whatever it is in this space. So, because I've also taken like belly dance actually, with a group of, it was all women in there, and it's similar where it was finally what allowed me to, yeah, I guess just open myself up to receiving friends here with those classes, because otherwise I was just kind of going to places, getting what I needed and leaving. And with those kinds of like dance classes, I was putting myself in a space and having to be there for an hour, doing something that I didn't do well and in front of people. So yeah, I don't know if that has something to do with it, like the willingness to be vulnerable and offering that story to, like, with Issa, offering that story to that man, like, you didn't necessarily have to tell him, we came all this way to see you for your tofu, but that offers, it opens up, and it says, I'm, vulnerable in a kind of different kind of way, but yeah, I've opened myself up to conversation with you. I'm here because of you, basically.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because the best time for me on Thanksgiving is when we played charades. And it's like everyone's just playing and like letting loose. Like there's no defenses in that. You're just everyone's moving their body. No, without language. It's really interesting how much connection can happen without language, I think, is kind of what we're noting here.
I also think it's interesting how different it is having a one-on-one friendship to having a friendship like we have between 5 of us, which is something that I haven't had since I was like a teenager. Like I used to have groups of friends, and then for whatever reason grew up, and most of my friendships were just one-on-one, like going for coffee, going for drinks, but it would always just be the 2 of us, me and my friend, or sometimes me and Paul and a friend. But like, yeah, and how it's a whole different way of engaging, and how it makes you think about yourself differently, because you're in like all these different relationships all at the same time, and then there's like the meta relationship that is all of your relationship to each other, and you're being held by all these individuals, and they all have a certain perspective on you and a certain idea of who you are and a love for you. But then there's like the kind of the love coming from the group as well, and your relationship to that group and your place in that group. And I find it like it's really strange for me, and really beautiful, but also like I'm always second guessing myself, especially in these sort of calls where I'm like, am I talking too much? Am I being too bossy? Like, because those are my tendencies, and like trying to like figure out where I am in the constellation of the 5 of us is like a constant little problem that's working in my brain. Obviously, source of much joy also, but it's just like, and I think there's a reason. My point is, I think there's a reason there's 3 women on this card, not 2, because a 2-person relationship is a whole different thing to a 3+.
It's interesting. Bonnie's talked about this, about like you have to keep zooming out to like figure out your blind spots, right? So like I might have a relationship with you, but you and I then have a blind spot, so then we need to bring in somebody else, and then the 3 of us have a blind spot, so then we've got to kind of go outside ourselves, and then ultimately that leads to nature. But yeah, like how there's like so many more eyes, like there's so many more eyes on on each other, on the mission. And I was listening to a podcast last night about how it was the Emerald for the Intuitive, and he was talking about bringing your intuitions, bringing your visions, bringing your dreams to the group, because they're usually meant for the group. We're sort of lived in this solipsistic society where it's just the individual, and it's about my dream for me and my vision for me, when it's when there's something really important about having a whole collective, having a constellation in which to because this happens with us. It seems like, someone will have a vision and it's not meant for them. It's meant for one of us, or meant for some of us, and so, yeah, there's something really potent about, and like you said, also like discombobulating too. Like the shape shifting seems to like be a lot faster in a larger group, but then there's also this really cool the resources get like dispersed more. I don't have to carry so much, I guess.
Yeah, that example actually reminds me of my birthday one year. I invited people because it was also a going away party, so it was a multi-purpose party. And I invited people from all throughout my life. So people from when I was a kid, to people when I was in middle school, to people when I was in college. And to my surprise, a lot of them showed up. And so I had all of these people from different phases of my life together in a room, and it felt really weird already because we all went to eat together. But then we went and did a breakout room together, and that's all especially strange when you see parts of your psyche trying to work out problems together. Because like, and there was like something to this breakout room where like it was required that you, like, I'm Mr. Green, so I'm sitting next to Miss Brown. Who's Miss Brown? And so they're like looking for each other in this kind of way too. And by the end, like it seemed like everybody knew each other really well, but I'm sitting there just astonished and just like, why do I feel so weird? Because yeah, I didn't know how to interact with any of these people on a one-on-one basis. I'm used to making those people feel so special when I'm usually with them. And that was something I noticed about myself, was how much attention I put on each person when I'm with them normally, and how I am definitely in no position to be able to do that right now because there's just so many places. So it's like what we're saying, like having to spread your attention thin when you have, I guess, so many separate relationships, because this is easy because we all have that similar meeting point and it all kind of comes from the same place. But having them meet up throughout life in different phases of me, it was almost like, yeah, having different versions of me needing to reconcile.
I guess maybe there's some sort of like impossibility of shapeshifting when there's enough people. Like you can't be, like I can't be the lovely friendly person that I am with Lizelle and the hard ass I am with Holly, and like I can't be all these different people. I don't know who I am to each of you, but just imagine, right? I can't do those. I can't switch fast enough, and so I just have to, at some point you have to give up and just be like, fuck it, it's me. And if they don't like me, that's like one-on-one is easier to manage, it's easier to fake, because you can read that person and give them what they want. But when you have 4 people in front of you, you can't, it's impossible to read them all and give them all what they want. So you just have to be you, which is terrifying.
And you have to listen really deeply, because you have to know when it's your note to play, right? You have to know when it's time for you to let the other shine, and when it's time for you to step in and play your part.
Yeah, that there's a part of us, like I always think that different friends polish different sides of our diamond. But there's a part of us that can only be polished within a group, because then it's kind of like the whole diamond has to be present. That's beautiful. Because I've also experienced just like one lunch with 3 people that were from the same period. They were at that time people in my life who I had individual relationships with, and then we had a lunch together, the 4 of us, and it was the most awkward lunch ever because I had different sides with each of them.
Something weird happened to me when I was like in primary school. So I guess I must have been like 10 or 11 or 12. And I had 3 girlfriends who were incredibly close. And we were 2 pairs of 2. So it's me and my best friend and her best friend. But the 4 of us hung around all the time. And then we went off to secondary school and we got separated and, you know, got boyfriends and things changed. But we were incredibly tight. Like we didn't speak to anyone else. And years later, I met someone who we went to school with. And she said that we all put on a funny voice when we talk to each other. I was not conscious of this happening at all, but everyone else in school noticed that we were all putting on like a weird, exaggerated accent, or that was their perception. But I wasn't aware that we were doing it. And I've always, like, I wished in some ways that I've stayed in contact with those women so I could ask them if they were aware of this, whether this was something we were doing deliberately, but I just didn't know and I just picked up on it, or whether it's like something that happened, like a group mind type of thing. And it also makes me wonder, what weird habit have we 5 all got into that we're not aware of, but everyone else is pointing at us going, oh, look at those weird hats they always wear, or whatever it is that we do.
How disheveled their hair always is.
Because we create a community as a group, right? And then there are community expectations and norms within that group that from outside might look completely bonkers. And I think that's what happened with me and these 3 girls and our weird voice. But yeah. And then do I still speak in that weird voice? Is my voice the weird voice that I started speaking in when I was 12 to fit in with the girls?
I will never know.
Maybe we speak it too.
That's how you identify your people. Like speaks in a weird voice. But there's something beautiful in like the shared humanity of all human beings, and then this group forming
Mm.
thing that we have, the both and.
Well, on that note, then there was something that I saw on when I was researching this one that said reaching new heights together because they all have their cups up.
Hmm.
So I don't know, like in the idea of the humanity at large, but then you have this smaller group that's kind of attempting to reach new heights together, banding together to share positive energy and spending time with people you cherish. Yeah, that seems like it's like a joy generator.
Looking at that card, with the 3 raised cups, it makes me think of a cone of power, because it's like making a.
Oh yeah.
That's even better imagery for what I was trying to get across then, in a light versus evil kind of sense.
That's funny. I was just looking up the etymology of celebration, and it's talking about like performance, honoring a day or season by appropriate festivities, performance of a religious ceremony. And so just for me, then evoked like the potency of actually bringing the legitimate spiritual element to it. Like, because in this card, you know, they're like celebrating this waterfall, you know, they're celebrating the water. It looks like they're almost like worshiping the water, praising it. And so something too important, like this goes back, I guess, to the mission of that shared mission of friendship that is constellating towards that devotion to the divine and how potent that is. And maybe that was also part of what I was like missing, or just maybe it was like grief or something on Thanksgiving, of just that sense of there's so much more potential here, and just feeling that sense of grief that we're not tapping, like there's so much more potential here, but it's not there yet, you know. But then of course going back to just accepting how it is and not judging that, but just noting maybe that's also part of the potency of our 5 of that devotion to the divine.
Friendship within fellowship.
Yeah.
There is something very unique and special about like a coven relationship, because it's not, I mean, like if you think about traditional covens, and by traditional I mean like, I don't know, 1940s to 70s, like they're like psychic spiritual development groups. They're chosen families, often of people who are ostracized from their family of origin for whatever reason, because they're weirdos, or the culture would judge them as weirdos, and so they band together to look after each other in very practical ways, but also, like as Sarah was saying, with this shared goal of going higher together. And that's not a normal friendship, and it's not a normal fellowship either, I guess. Like, yeah, it's friendship within fellowship, or fellowship within friendship, I don't know which, but like it's a unique, I can't think of, I'm sure there are other examples, but I can't think of other examples of coven is also generally thought of as something that will last your whole life, which is not necessarily common in friendship. So there's something very unique and beautiful about this formation that can happen. I mean, whatever you choose to call it. And it means something to me as well when I say, like, to the dancing ladies, and my dance class, not on the card. I just mentioned something about you guys, and I was just like, oh yeah, my coven, blah blah blah, and they're like, ooh. And then I have to explain, you know, oh, it started as a tongue-in-cheek thing, but now it's just become a thing we say, like the whole like origin story of that. But it is a word that captures our friendship better than any other word I can think of to use.
Someone was like, oh, a coven? You have a coven? I was like, yes, I'm part of a coven.
That's how Peter says it. The coven. How's the coven?
So
Like
funny.
Canadian.
Well, this guy's definitely not Canadian. This guy's actually very Southern, but he's
Interesting.
coven.
I just want to point out how coven-like Isa is looking. I don't know, you just had a very powerful coven presence around you with your dark hair and
Yeah, I don't know.
shadows.
I was thinking that too. And this blanket is like just half wrap over just this one shoulder. It's like some weird sash that I've been awarded for
You're like a
some.
monk. You kind of look like a
Yeah,
monk.
kinda. But I like it. I like how it looks. I was like, oh, maybe I should try to get a shirt or a dress with this design.
That can be a weird thing. Also, I want to mention that, Holly, when you spoke about the three women worshipping as if they are worshipping the water, I did feel a very intense pull towards Glastonbury with all of you.
Mm.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how you guys feel about that. I'm glad that Lizelle says that though, because I thought she might be like, oh, I've already been there. I was only there a couple of months ago. I don't want to go again. But it would be so nice to share that experience with you all, especially if we're thinking a bit later in the year. Yeah, it's just such a beautiful place to worship water, and there is something amazing. You know that what's her name? Jane Goodall, the chimp lady.
What's her
She
name?
she observed chimps doing this weird like meditative rocking, staring at. They'd go to a waterfall, the specific one, and they'd stare at it, and they'd like just get into the zone, really enjoying that waterfall. And that was her. She was suggesting that this was evidence of spiritual feeling in primates, and I completely get that. Like, I think I've been that chimp more than once. And we're doing it in a group as well, and having that common, like, you see it a little bit in tourists. If like you go to see some beautiful waterfall and all the tourists will stand there and just like gaze or get out their phones, which I guess is our new way of worshipping. But like, you're all together and pointed at this thing and like sending your devotion towards it. Like, yeah, that's something really wonderful about joining with a group of people and all directing your attention and devotion towards one source. And it's not like, oh, let's all direct our attention to this thing. It calls you to do that. It's not like a decision you make. It's just like, oh, we have to, do this thing with this water.
I like the raised glasses. There's something. It's very aspirational indeed. Like,
And their cups are filled, I'm assuming.
Yeah, there's something in that too about like the sharing. It's interesting, you guys just having had Thanksgiving, and the big thing I understand is sharing food for Thanksgiving. So it's like, and that sort of sharing of experience. Like and again, this is not just us, this is monkeys and probably all animals, well, all social animals, like love to get around food and have the same, because you're having the same experience. Like, if we're eating the same food, we're having the same experience, and that kind of like makes us feel closer.
And that's really interesting, because when I was walking the Pacific Crest Trail, it was amazing. Like, everything I needed on my back, all I have to do is put one foot in front of the other. It was hard. It's really hard. But just that sense, I felt so human. Except, like, I was like, I could live like this for the rest of my life. I'd love to live like this for the rest of my life in some ways, except I don't have anyone to share this with. Like, and that was enough. I mean, that was enough to take this being immersed in nature and traversing landscapes, going, this is a nice moment and experience, but I wouldn't trade it for that fellowship. And I mean, that's really the essence of celebration and abundance. What point is any of it if you don't have anyone to share it with? It's just piled up crap if you don't have that ability to give it away and to exchange. I mean, and that's generally the arc of the whole initiation, the hero's journey, is casting oneself out temporarily, but always returning to give back to the community, to share the goods and the lessons learned with the greater whole. And so yeah, it's critical that we come back to that realization, that we do it together.
Together.
That reminds me, I haven't listened to a full episode yet, but I was listening to some Stephen Jenkinson podcast, and the title of the podcast is something like "Give Your Best Away,"
Mm-hmm.
and that's what he's saying is like your best is only your best if it's not yours anymore.
Yeah.
Like as long as you keep it, it's not your best.
Mhm.
like anything that you think is your thing, only becomes better once it's in the hands of someone else. And I think there's a bit of that too. In friendship, it's just kind of like taking a bit of your clay and giving it to someone else and make something else with it.
Well, that's what the male mentor I was referencing is like a true deep friend. He said that once to me. It's like, I'm exhausting myself for you. I'm exhausting myself for you. Not in the sense that this is a burden, like no sense at all of any, like, I don't want to. It was like, I'm giving you everything I have because that's what I'm called to do. That's the way to live. I just remember that, like, I'm exhausting myself for you, and just how beautiful it was to hear that from him. Like what a gift that was for someone to exhaust themselves for another.
I've been thinking quite anxiously about the shortness of life and then people's desperate attempts to make the most of it. And this feels like the wisest way maybe to make the most of the short time that we're giving, the limited time, because we are finite creatures, whether we like it or not, is to spend it on others, to exhaust ourselves on others, like your friend is saying. It's because we're such a hoarding lot, human beings. But it feels like that's such a waste of the precious little time that we have.
I think it's just, I mean, this word that keeps coming up, right? Like trust. Because I was looking at the etymology of exhaust, because it caught my attention. And something about apparently it's related to like scooping up water or drying out water, kind of imagine from a well. So it's like kind of not doing that anymore, like not drawing out water from the well anymore. And it makes me think like, oh, if you exhaust yourself for someone, in a way it feels like you're momentarily pausing your access to the source. You're not scooping out that anymore. You're giving everything you have to this other thing that needs it more immediately, maybe because you have it right now and they don't. And then there's this whole trust of like, well, hopefully someone else will also give theirs to you. So these things keep going on. Or you trust that that source is going to come back and it's going to be able to kind of heal you and repair you before you go completely dry. So, yeah, there's a lot of exercising trust.
Because love is abundant, right? Love is like actually so abundant. And I remember Josh from the Emerald was saying, when there's an open vessel, love will find its way. Like love finds its way into open vessels, basically. I love what you're saying, Isa, there of trusting that love is abundant and the cup will be filled every time you drink that, or you give it away. There's always more to receive and to tap into.
Oh, now I have to say it because you said tap. So I saw this quote and it relates with what you're saying. So it's by Brother David Steindl Rast. And it says, the root of joy is gratefulness. It is not joy that makes us grateful. It is gratitude that makes us joyful.
Oh my God, yes. This
And that
grasping
is,
thing is like really good for you.
Yeah. But it can't be forced either, you know? Like, I mean, maybe sometimes there is a little bit, you gotta like make that step, but there's a huge difference obviously between giving from here out of guilt or out of like a ledger versus giving from here because divine will instructs you to do so.
but
So,
there are studies about gratitude that if people do the gratitude journaling, they're
Mhm.
actually more joyful.
Yeah.
And it's like scientific studies. It's like with control groups and everything.
Yeah.
So, and that feels a bit forced, but still it worked. So,
Yeah. Yes. I mean, sometimes you have to, it's like the hard start. You've got to kind of, and then
or
oh,
make that start easier. So there's this song that I learned that I really like that's very easy. And it's, thank you for my heart, spirit. Thank you for my heart. Thank you for my heart, spirit. Thank you for my heart. It's beautiful. It's powerful. This sacred heart. It's beautiful. It's powerful. This sacred heart. And you can do anything. You can be grateful for your coffee in the morning. You can be grateful for your camper. You can be grateful for your family. Like, and something about singing it and clapping with it makes it not so hard. I mean, yeah, it's hard to be like, oh, I'm grateful for my car. I'm grateful for this day. Like, yeah, the way that it's just the attitude, the intention that's behind it that makes gratitude joyful, or it can make it, you know, begrudging and difficult.
yeah. Well, I think that's a great, I think that's a great way to finish on a song that's about gratitude. I think you closed that off perfectly, Sarah. So thank you. Maybe you record that and send it in the chat and then we can like,
Yes,
I can play
please.
it. I can play it when I like need a
Yeah.
little boost. Need my cup filled.